press conference, and I want to welcome the journalist and Representative Peggy Scott is here as well. She's not involved in the lawsuit. And, well, it's a big day for us and my plaintiffs behind me. A few minutes ago, I confirmed that my client's 18 current and former Minnesota citizens filed a federal lawsuit in the United States District Court of Minnesota. The allegations assert that several county, state, and city governmental departments and officials targeted the citizens for their political activities, violating the right to privacy and protections afforded them under the Federal Driver's Privacy Protection Act. And there are also state common law claims for invasion of privacy. Money damages could exceed hundreds of thousands of dollars against these governmental entities and the individuals who illegally access the records. The plaintiffs' protected private driver's license records were illegally targeted at least 600 times. These illegal accesses have been constant and targeted against this citizen group, including elected officials who politically participate together in Wabasha County government. This would include current state legislator Steve Drazkowski, current Wabasha County board members Deb Roshan and David Harms, former Wabasha County board member Merle Norman, Bev Stowe, as a retired state court official, and others. It's the belief of the plaintiffs that the governmental defendants were illegally accessing these federally protected records for political purposes. After all, these individuals got involved in government to prove it. They're reformers. Why would the law enforcement officials go into these federally protected records? Well, to gain any information they could, any dirt. They could find out if there's a suspended license, expired license tabs, if there's a criminal history, whatever. All that information is there. But what's federally protected is that information plus their date of birth, driver's license number, social security number, addresses, driver's license photos, weights, heights, social security numbers, various health and disability information, and organ donor instructions. The way we're going to present the allegations of the complaint is that we've prepared each of the plaintiffs or representatives of the plaintiffs to make a speech. I presented a bio and distributed it, and it has the list of speakers, and you can get to know each plaintiff and how they feel about the government responding to their participation in government by going through their private records in a general pattern of retaliation. Also, I've handed out a complaint, 95 pages, but don't be intimidated. The 95 pages begin with page 1, and the plaintiffs are listed, starting with Deb Roshan and so forth. Those plaintiffs are a group. They're not an association of people set out to do one thing or another. They're just politically active. They're like anyone you know in your block who cares about others and wants to get involved in government and make a difference. Sure, some of them have been or are elected officials, but others are just concerned citizens who written letters to the editor or expressed an opinion or attended a meeting, and as a result, their privacy is violated. Then, of course, we have the defendants, beginning with the principal perpetrator of retaliation, Wabasha County. The county attorney, James Nordstrom, the county sheriff, Rodney Barsh. They know they've done this. They know they've retaliated against this group. They know they've accessed private records to do it. Then all the other counties who have also accessed the private records. Were they working with the Wabasha County law enforcement? What were they doing? Why were they accessing these records without law enforcement purpose? Then we have the cities. The city of Wabasha, right there connected to the Wabasha County Sheriff's Department through its police department. Many cities in the area, were they giving their passcodes to Wabasha County so they could access those records officially? Then we have, of course, the state officials. Why was the Attorney General dipping into the private records of these people? We have the Department of Corrections and the related correction departments in the counties looking into the records. My clients are not criminals. Why was probation looking into the records? We have, of course, and at the very tippy top, the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. Where is the Commissioner today to take accountability for this database, which has no safeguards for privacy? Despite the Office of Legislative Auditor's report in February of 2013 saying there are problems here, systematic problems, the Commissioner of Department of Public Safety has done nothing. So the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety knows that access is so convenient that law enforcement officials who oppose opponents of the government can dip into this private data for political purposes. The Commissioner of Public Safety has enabled Wabasha County Sheriff's Department, the county attorney, and others to go after these individuals' private data for political purposes. So it begins at the very bottom with someone at a screen without law enforcement purpose, pinging means targeting, picketing their data to see if they can find something they can use for political purposes. But then it goes all the way to the top, to the Commissioner of Public Safety, when February of 2013, the legislative auditor informed, hey, this system's broken. And guess what? It hasn't been fixed. My client's goal is to proceed with the lawsuit against these defendants to get the system fixed and to be rewarded damages as allowed by federal law under the Federal Drivers Privacy Protection Act. When we go through the complaint, the introduction is very easy to read. Then the allegations start about page, the listing of how many times each defendant has pinged the private group's data, group's private data at page 20. For example, Wabasha County has pinged the group's data 140 times. That starts at page 20. And then at the end is Exhibit A. And that is very important because everyone will be interested in what exactly are we talking about? How does Mr. Cardall know that there are violations here of private data? Well, there it is. We worked as a group doggedly to get the information from the Department of Public Safety and Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Prior to just a few months ago, this data could not be obtained with the Department of Public Safety and Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Now it's available, and we compiled this table of over 600 illegal accesses. This information are facts, but look, we don't even get to know who illegally accessed the information. When the Department of Public Safety and Bureau of Criminal Apprehension are delivering this document to us, they know that these are illegal, or should know these are illegal accesses. I mean, all these accesses over this period of time, and they don't inform us who did the accessing, and we want to know. That's part of this lawsuit, that each law enforcement officer who illegally accessed information on one of these people is going to be held accountable, $2,500 per violation at least. So we've shared with you all the data. That there's the accesses, you have the date, you have the time, you have who did it, but not actually the individual who did it, and that's our lawsuit. But we also have claims relating to the system itself. Those are claims against the Department of Public Safety for having such a system which allows law enforcement to use citizens' private data for political purposes against people who are criticizing the government. Well, now I'll go into the citizen presenters. The bio has been distributed. If you don't have one, they're available on the table. And I won't be introducing the speakers to hurry things along. They'll just go one by one and they'll introduce themselves. And at the end, we'll do questions and answers.
Good morning. My name is Deb Russian, and this is my husband, Jim. In 2010, I ran for county commissioner because I saw a need to reform Wabasha County government. The county had recently built an oversized criminal justice center, resulting in huge tax increases. I believed it was time to rein in county government spending. Looking through my rose-colored glasses, I actually believe citizens can and should get involved in their government to make a difference. I was wrong. The government machine met me with resistance and has been very busy retaliating against a commissioner they view as a threat to their own interests. It was only recently that I learned just how under attack I and my family are. After requesting the DBS and BCA data for me and my family, we were stunned to learn the complete disregard some Wabasha County employees have for the law. The Wabasha County Sheriff's Office, the Wabasha County Attorney's Office, the Wabasha County Court Services have repeatedly violated all professional, moral, and ethical boundaries by continuing to access our private data over and over and over again. As a result, my family and I now live with the fear and anxiety over who has our private information and what they intend to do with it. We are here today because no one who runs for public office or seeks to reform their government should ever have to endure the targeted, illegal search and seizure of their private data. We are here today to bring an end to the retaliation against us, as well as the blatant disregard for the rights of private citizens and those citizens who desire to seek elected office. Thank you.
Hey everybody, Representative Steve Druskowski from Mazeppa. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety began maintaining audit trail data of driver's licenses accesses on January 1st of 2003. So that's when they began actually keeping track of who was accessing which driver's license data, the date, time, etc. My first data ping actually occurred in May of 2004, 1 month after I decided to run for the Minnesota State Senate. My private data was pinged on the date of and shortly after my very first announcement of candidacy. During the past 8 years, my data was pinged regularly by police officers in my opponent's hometown, on the dates directly preceding and dates directly after multiple general elections and a special election. On days when I was nowhere near the location of the county or city that was snooping in my private data. On days and times when my wife, daughter, or I were working, going to school, or were not even in the state. They pinged the private data of multiple members of my family 14 times, 3 of which included all 3 family members. None of us recall ever even having had a traffic ticket during that time frame. They pinged my personal private data at least 95 times, and the same driver's license protected data of my wife and daughter another 38 times since May of 2004, a total of 133 times. In addition to the intentional violation of my family's privacy that I just mentioned, my private data was also handled without care by the government during and after 2 separate false, frivolous, and malicious criminal allegations developed by Wabasha County government officials. You know, President Jefferson once said that when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. But when the government fears the people, there is liberty. He intended for government to serve the people who sanctioned it, and not the other way around. Local and state government employees who know me know that I strive to reform our government so that it can begin to live within the means of the people that it is intended to serve. My family has suffered through more than our share of mistreatment by local government officials. To learn that they are using the machinery of government against me simply because I am trying to reform it is very alarming. We entrust government employees to follow the law, not to violate it. Through the recent NSA and IRS scandals in our federal government, Americans are ever so weary about the government's abuse of the power that we entrust to it. We stand before you today to let you know that a similar abusive exercise of power exists in Minnesota's state and local governments. Our aim is not to shrink from these discovered realities, but to stand up taller than ever as we work to bring our government back to where it was intended, to serve the people who sanction it.
Good morning. I'm Beverly Snow. I've resided in Wabasha County since early 1990. I am married to Jerry Snow. I'm the former mayor of the city of Hammond, the former city clerk of the city of Hammond, and I ran for county commissioner, although I lost. During the beginning of these intrusive accesses to my private and my family's private data, I had left my position as an alcohol and drug assessor and child protection social worker for Dodge County and developed the second drug court in Minnesota. As an employee of the State District Court, I believe that access to our data was a form of retaliation for the judicial reform I was supporting in development of drug courts. There are approximately 42 accesses to our private data by other district court employees. I believe many of the DVS and BCA accesses from local and other Minnesota law enforcement were because of my commitment to assist with the development of drug courts in their communities. I was working for the 5th Judicial District, Mankato, Minnesota, and had access to our data from Nicollet County Probation, Martin County Probation, Jackson County Probation, Blue Earth County Probation, and Le Sueur County Probation, and several accesses from area, police, and sheriff departments. Since I've never been on probation, nor my husband, and I work for the judicial system, I find it very concerning that these agencies would be checking on my information, and more concerned that they'd be checking on my husband's information when he was not involved in my employment. This is retaliatory behavior against government employees by other government employees. I believe that Jerry's data being accessed are directly related to the various public positions and whether I was elected or appointed that I held, including access by St. Paul Police Department late on the eve of Christmas Day. Jerry was at home in Hammond, Minnesota with his family celebrating the holiday. Another access Jerry received was on 4/23 of this current year from Wabasha County Police, or Sheriff's Office, excuse me. It was most likely a retaliation for my involvement in the Wabasha County Government Study Commission court hearing on April 22nd. I do believe that many of these accesses to our personal data that appear to be for no apparent reason are directly related to my position on issues in Wabasha County government, along with my support and development of many state drug courts, including assisting several other counties in areas when they were requesting that help. It is difficult to watch our family and others suffer from hateful retaliation for no apparent reason other than standing firm on our convictions and beliefs in our constitutional government.
Hello, my name is Merle Norman, and this is my wife, Anna Mae, of 55 years. While I was an officer in law enforcement, my goal was to protect and serve, and to enforce and personally obey the law. We were shocked to find that our private personal data had been illegally searched and seized by public employees who should be protecting us, including our privacy. Instead, they have illegally searched and seized our personal data without reasonable cause. We are being treated worse than someone would or could be if suspected of a crime. The officers would need to have a court-ordered warrant to search our home, anybody's home. We have been wronged. It is a crime against us to have had our private personal data searched and seized from the DVS and the BCA. We are concerned with whom this information has been shared. Who might have seized our data for identity theft? What are your concerns about your private data? Have you checked to see who has searched and seized your personal private information? Law enforcement officers, whether they're city, county, or state, or government employees, should be protecting and serving, not assaulting concerned citizens. I have to say this, Ben Franklin, when he left the Continental Congress and went out on the street, remember the question the lady asked him, Mr. Franklin, what kind of government have you given us? He said, a constitutional republic, madam, if you can keep it. You means all of us, all these years later. Concerned citizens is what makes a constitutional republic work.
My name is Dave Harms. My history of being painted started in 2003 when I was chairman of the Wabasha County Board and introduced a resolution to make the Wabasha County Attorney's position a part-time position. When I found out how many times I had been checked, I felt like my privacy had been invaded. I was trained as a police officer to respect the rights of people when I went through police training. And now this was happening to me. The only reason I can come up with is that there are people who misuse the machinery of government to go after those who are not in agreement with them. I felt like a person that came home and found my house burglarized, my personal information stolen.
Good morning, my name is John Adams, this is my wife Donna. Today, Americans find themselves worrying about federal agencies seizing their private information. And now we find even more egregious local government violating our civil rights by illegally helping themselves to our private data. Donna and I have been the victims of illegal pings at least 27 times. Many of those violations came from within Wabasha County government. At least 3 of those pings occurred on the day or the day after we attended county government meetings in Wabasha, where we exercised our duty as citizens to help reform county government in a positive way. We give thanks and honor to God for help opening our eyes and allowing us to see this criminal activity. These illegal seizures of private data must be stopped.
Good morning, my name is Virginia Coates. I started attending county board meetings on a regular basis as I had recently retired and I was concerned about how my tax dollars were being spent. As I attended these meetings, I would join in on open discussion and speak at public forum when I had concerns, ideas, or a different opinion to offer. I quickly learned that the elected officials are not open to hearing opinions that differ from theirs. On one occasion, the county attorney got right in my face and said, "What's your problem?" It is one thing to try and intimidate me, but it's another thing to ping or access my private data. And that is exactly what happened. My private data was illegally searched by Wabasha County Court Services after that encounter. I take exception to the character profile that is being created by accessing my private data numerous times over and over again. It is creating a false identity of the real me, who I really am. It is damaging to my character, and it is just simply wrong. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Julie Porcher. I've had my data, my private data, illegally searched by the Wabasha County Sheriff's Office for the simple act of writing a letter to the editor that was critical of the government. A few simple paragraphs, and you can look at it yourself. What is doubly distressing to me is that this is not the first time that I've been made a target by the county. The county has abused the power of their elected office to intimidate me. Not once, but twice, I was the victim of meritless criminal charges when I hadn't set foot on the wrong side of the law. These charges were always dropped before the court date ever arrived, but only after my privacy had been violated numerous times on what I believe was a fishing expedition to try and find some dirt before the court date.
Good morning, my name is Marlon Graves, and this is my wife of 48 years, Karen. Some of our friends standing behind us here discovered their personal data had been illegally accessed and urged us to check if our personal data had also been accessed. At first we hesitated. I and Karen are in our 70s, and we don't venture far from home. Finally, we gave in and we requested our DVS and BCA records. Boy, were we surprised. Nearly 50 times our data had been accessed. More alarming was the fact that both of us had been accessed by towns in Minnesota that we have not visited in many years. Even worse, we were accessed in towns that we have never been in. How can this happen, and why did this happen? It's not right.
Well, as you can see here, there's a real culture of abuse here by some government employees. And last session, Representative Holbert introduced a bill. I was co-author on that bill that would have changed the penalties for anyone that's a government employee breaching someone's data illegally without authorization. without reasonable cause. Unfortunately, the Senate did not take up that bill, so I would just like to urge citizens to put pressure on their elected officials at the state level to, particularly their senators, to have this bill heard and get it passed. This is the only way we're gonna change the culture of these employees willy-nilly accessing the information of private citizens. You know, we're on the cusp of implementing MNsure here in the state of Minnesota, and no new government agency is gonna have more of your personal information than MNsure. So I would just urge citizens to keep a watchful eye of the government on their personal information. As many of these citizens talked about, they were able to contact the Department of Public Safety and find out how many times their information has been accessed. If you're curious out there, if you're a citizen and you're curious, this is your right as a citizen to ask for that information. You may be surprised. If you're interested in looking at the law on the state level, it's Chapter 13. It's contained in we have 15 volumes of statute here, and this is Chapter 13, which deals with how government should treat your data. Just this paper-clipped section here. It's not as complicated as it might look or sound, and I'd urge citizens to look to, if they're interested, the bill that we talked about last session had to do with Chapter 13.09. So I would encourage citizens to be aware. And I would also call on the director, the commissioner of the public safety to really get his thumb on this problem. This is until the culture changes, until someone from higher up comes down on these people, for lack of a better phrase, the culture's not going to change. We would like to have some laws that put some teeth into this. To me, the first action should be that if someone has been accessing others' information wrongly, that those people should immediately be terminated. Only by setting that sort of a precedent is this kind of thing going to come to an end. And I think Eric has some more comments.
Thank you, Representative Scott, who's not a plaintiff for the lawsuit. Now we'll open it to questions to me or to the plaintiffs themselves. Mr. First.
Why are you so certain that this is retaliation, that the purpose of these lookups to dig up dirt?
Well, one example would be, as Ms. Porcher stated, is that the letter to the editor is published in the newspaper, and then the law enforcement is pinging the records. And in the press release, I summarize the type of data that you would look for, the evidence you would look for. So I'll just read through those. On multiple dates on which announcements of candidacy for elected office were printed in the newspapers, ping. On the dates of, dates directly preceding, and dates directly after multiple general elections and a special election, ping. On the day that letters to the editor critical of the government were printed in the newspaper, ping. On dates immediately following county board meetings where group members challenged the position of the government officials in positions of authority, ping. On dates directly following dates when group members requested data from the government, ping. On dates when group members attended government meetings, ping. So one example that I was at was a county hearing in district court, and the attendees at the hearing were pinged. So can you imagine if you attend a public hearing that your data is being accessed by law enforcement? It doesn't make any of us feel comfortable. Law enforcement attended the hearing. They were present. They made their dissatisfaction with us known. And then they go back to their office and they ping the records of the attendees. Similarly with the letter to the editor. Who's going to write a letter to the editor if you become targeted by law enforcement? Who's going to attend a meeting, take a position, run a campaign if they're going to be targeted by law enforcement? As Mr. Norman said, that's not a constitutional republic. That's the government being partisan and retaliatory. And law enforcement isn't able to do that. I like cases, and you know that because I filed dozens of cases against the government, where when I go on the street, 99% of the people agree with me. And the other 1% are government employees. And this is one of those cases. No one wants this to happen to them, that they get involved in the government and then their private data is accessed for for political purposes. It's not so much the data, it's also who's going for the data, law enforcement, and who they're pinging, this targeted group. And so it's because of their views, their First Amendment protected views, that the law enforcement has targeted them by who they are to get that information. And the federal government thankfully protects that data and provides damages of $2,500 per violation. So part of the lawsuit, because the government won't tell us, who did the pinging? Which law enforcement officer was at the screen knowing that he didn't have a law enforcement purpose and accessed the data? And then, if he didn't have a law enforcement purpose, why was he doing it? Well, he was doing it because the identity of these people, they had stepped forward and were criticizing the government. They were reformers. Our list attached to the complaint has been scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed by the plaintiffs. We've eliminated all those accesses which we believe to be authorized for license applications, license renewals, tab renewals, whatever. The government gave us enough information so we could scrub the list. We even took one off the City of New Brighton Police Department. They used the data for the purpose of inviting an alumnus, Mr. Harms, to the police party reunion. Well, we're not going to sue him over that, but that shows our good nature about it. But these other purposes were for retaliation. And the point is, it's too open. Even you journalists who report on government affairs would know that you're being pinged all the time. It's the same system. You're getting pinged, we're getting pinged. We're offended because these are common citizens who step forward and participate in government and want reform. They're left and right, they're up and down, they're Democrat and Republican. They're just a group of local citizens who run generally for nonpartisan office. And they've been pinged because they opposed the construction of the county jail, they opposed the county administrator form of government, they've opposed excessive spending, and that's why they're being pinged. So in the answer to Mr. First's question, the reason is we know these people, and there's a general pattern of retaliation for the First Amendment views. But the claim here is for violation of federal privacy protections and also violation of the right against unreasonable